Hey folks, welcome back. So this is a little bit of a different format than I normally do, obviously here, but I want to share with you this model, which is kind of the subject of this week's post here on Future Human Project, both here on TikTok. This will be a YouTube video as well. And this is, of course, what I've posted about on Substack as well. So I want to share with you this hypothesis that I came up with. And the question I was really seeking to answer here is, why is it that people who are kind of in a chronically low-level trauma state, let's say their attachment system is wounded, they are in some form of complex trauma, something like that, why do they tend to go to dopamine-seeking behaviors instead of something else, right? Because dopamine is highly stimulating. And also, why are people kind of developing what is commonly termed now brain rot from chronic online use? So while you wouldn't necessarily guess this from just looking at the title of this graphic that I made in ChatGPT, and by the way, it's not perfect, the best I could come up with though, we're calling this, or I'm calling this rather, the cycle of brain rot. Okay, so this is my explanation to you about why it is that people develop brain rot. Okay, so it starts really not at the top, but over to the left where it says early childhood trauma. So brain rot or chronic online use or chronic dopamine seeking starts first with some sort of attachment issue. Okay. Now, you may not agree with this, but this is really kind of a hill I'm going to die on here if I need to. I really, truly believe a lot of people, the majority of people, have an insecure attachment style. Generally speaking, in the modern world, this is probably young people who are raised on screens and kind of low-key chronically neglected by their parents, although their parents didn't realize they're neglecting them. This could also be, of course, growing up in a dangerous situation, a toxic situation, something like that. And for whatever reason, the young person, or the person doesn't have to be a young person, is self-isolating and disconnected and feeling disconnected. And from that kind of hole in ourselves where we are longing for some connection, but maybe we don't realize that's what we need or want, we're going to unconsciously reach out and want to get connection. Now, when we have attachment wounds, we will tend to be low in oxytocin. Okay. So by the way, I should have said early on, this is, I've run this through multiple AIs to see if there's research that backs up this entire hypothesis. There is. So while this is not a formal articulated model, there's plenty of science to back up every step of what I'm sharing here. Okay. So let's say you didn't get the attachment needs met. You're low in oxytocin. You don't feel connected. You don't feel safe. You don't feel filled up with that yummy, connected, loved up, I have people who care about me feeling. You feel empty, alone, isolated, that kind of thing. If we feel that way, we're going to tend to reach out to try to get connection, right? So the obvious place where people are going to do this, especially when they're alone, is online, right? So we go online. We go online specifically to see human interaction, whether we are in a chat, whether we are watching videos of other people and getting a bit of dopamine hit that way, or whether we're on social, like a bit more, interactively, right? Now, as we're doing this, of course, the cliche that we all know at this point is that there's a lot of dopamine seeking involved with being chronically online, which is true. But for me, the question is, why would a person who has attachment wounds be seeking dopamine instead of something else? So let me explain. There's a relationship between dopamine and oxytocin. So dopamine and oxytocin are both reward neurotransmitters. So dopamine is, of course, for pursuing, life-sustaining, it's motivating you to pursue life-sustaining things. Oxytocin is reward for social connection. So they're different. But social connection, of course, in evolutionary context, is about survival, is about tribal belonging. They're different rewards and they have a different tone, but they overlap in that they're both rewards, if that makes sense. So I think a lot of times when people are reaching for dopamine, what they're actually reaching for is oxytocin, but they don't realize that. So dopamine, of course, is a faster hit. It is a boom, right now kind of, whoa kind of feeling, right? Oxytocin is slower. It surges in these little waves of feeling safe, of feeling at ease, of feeling connected and comforted, right? So it's a different rhythm. It's a different vibe. But if you're online, what you're going to get is dopamine. So obviously over time, a person chronically online is going to spike their dopamine system a lot, which means it's going to be an exhausted dopamine system. It's not going to work as well. They're going to have, hedonic adaptation. As we all know, this turns into all kinds of like degenerate seeking of like extreme kind of, corners of the internet where things are hyper stimulating and hyper novel. And this, of course, again, depletes the dopamine system further. And you end up with a person who has very flat affect, who's very low mood, who's not motivated, who's not satisfied by anything, who's bored by life, who feels what they would call depressed. In a lot of ways, that is the collapse of the dopamine system. Now, as the dopamine system collapses, and you continue to seek online, what's going to happen is it's going to start to spike glutamate, right? Now, glutamate is a neurotransmitter involved with anxiety, fear, shock, panic, overwhelm. It's that high alert, oh shit, like kind of feeling, right? It's anxiety, it's panic attacks, right? So we start to, when our dopamine system doesn't work, and again, there's science to back this up, we'll start to spike more glutamate. As you experience more glutamate spiking, you're going to feel more anxious, right? So this amplifies the anxiety that was probably already low level there in the nervous system. And that spiking of anxiety, of course, is going to make a person more stressed, more unhappy, more what's wrong with me, more I'm broken, more, more dysregulation, essentially, right? Now, where this cycle, again, ChatGPT did the best it could, but it's not perfect here. Where this cycle would loop back around, and this isn't exactly right here, would be that the person probably from this high glutamate state would need connection, because connection is one of the things that regulates the nervous system and calms us down out of a high glutamate spike. So, a lot of times if you want to support someone who is having a panic attack, you ground them out with personal connection. You help them breathe, you hold their hand, you hold space with them, you reassure them, and their brain will start to internalize that. So let's say you don't have that, though. You don't have a person to reassure you. What are you going to do? You're going to go back online because you don't realize that this is what's gone on. And rinse and repeat. You go back online, but more dopamine seeking, not realizing that you're actually reaching for, oxytocin, and more anxiety, more glutamate, blah, blah, blah. So this is what I think is going on with a lot of, again, why people are dopamine seeking so heavily in the first place, and also why we see people's nervous systems and brains getting more dysregulated the more online they are. So this is why we start to see this brain rot effect where people's, prefrontal cortex is just dull and dumb, and they are just kind of overstimulated, even though they're never leave the house, right? And they're overwhelmed. That's what's going on. So from my perspective, and again, this is a hypothesis. Again, there's a lot of science to back up every step of what I'm sharing here, but there's no, clinically tested, proven model. So this is just a theory, just a hypothesis. But this is what I think is going on in terms of why brain rot's a thing and how it, starts this way and how it perpetuates. Now, the solution, of course, would be to get real connection and start to fill your cup in terms of oxytocin, in terms of safe connection, in terms of really being tuned into, in terms of being co-regulated. It would also mean getting offline. It would mean, sorry, I'm getting wound up here. It would also mean recognizing the difference between dopamine and oxytocin and choosing consciously and intentionally to seek oxytocin producing experiences. So I can talk more about this. I'll be posting more about this over the channel over the next week here, but just thought I'd share this hypothesis with you. Let me know. What do you think? Do you call bullshit? Do you disagree? Do you like this? Does this resonate for you? Leave a comment. Let me know how this lands for you. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.